Harriet Quince was still seated beneath her husband's carved name when the royal genealogist removed hers. The chisel struck the root-bound family tree once. Her branch split from the stone. Across root-bound hall, silver plates remained untouched beneath winter candles. Gate lords, oath judges, and bloodhouse witnesses had gathered for the first purity banquet of Roland Hearth's reign. Harriet stood between the two children she had raised as her own. Tamsin, 13, kept her shoulders straight. 8-year-old Jude gripped Harriet's hand with both of his. Royal genealogist Bertram Quill brushed stone dust from the decree. Under the Blood Continuity Act, only descendants born to the royal wolf line may remain within the ruling branch. Lady Harriet entered through marriage. With her husband deceased and no blood-born child surviving him, her place returns to the outer record. Harriet looked toward the throne. Wolf King Roland Hearth sat beneath the black wolf crown, his younger brother's face harder than it had been before the disputed succession. "You signed this?" she asked. Roland's fingers closed around the throne arm. "Yes." "And the children?" Bertram answered for him. Tamsin and Jude entered the household by oath adoption. That oath created household guardianship and residence, not blood succession. Their care will remain in the household record, but their names cannot remain within the ruling branch. Jude stared at the pale scar where Harriet's name had been cut from the stone. "Does that mean he is not my uncle anymore?" Roland's expression shifted. Bertram lowered his voice. "It means the crown must distinguish affection from inheritance." Harriet turned to him. "You make family sound like a bookkeeping error. The decree protects the kingdom from competing claims. 3 border houses have questioned His Majesty's blood right. Adopted heirs within the ruling branch would deepen that uncertainty. Tamsin has never asked for the throne. Claims do not require desire. They require only a name others may use." Harriet looked back at Roland. "Did you ask whether they wanted to be cut away from their father's name? My brother was not their blood father. He carried Jude through moon fever and taught Tamsin her first winter oath. Roland Rose. I remember. Remembering is not defending. Roland had come to the nursery when grief kept him awake. He knew which lamp Jude feared during storms. Once, after Tamsin's first shift, he had rested his forehead against Harriet's before either of them stepped away. None of it had become a promise. Bertram signaled the stonekeeper. 2 smaller chisels were raised toward the children's names. Tamsin moved in front of Jude. "If you cut us off, where do we go?" "Your rooms remain until guardianship is reassigned," Bertram said. Harriet's grip tightened around Jude's hand. "Reassigned to whom? Without a bloodhouse sponsor, the children have no estate formally bound to defend their guardianship. Reassignment places them under a house answerable to the crown. My standing ended because Roland signed it away." The king descended from the throne. "Harriet, they lost one father to death. You will not make them lose their mother to policy. The decree does not deny that you raised them. It denies every right that made raising them more than unpaid service." Several witnesses lowered their eyes. Bertram remained composed. "The crown must secure their residence, property protection, and education under a house whose obligations can be enforced. The present arrangement ended with Prince Aldrich's death." Harriet faced Roland. "You used my branch to answer a challenge to yours." His jaw tightened. "The throne cannot survive another blood dispute. Then defend your claim without cutting children away from the only household they know." The first small chisel struck Tamsin's name. A sound moved beneath the floor. A slow scraping passed through the rootstone under the banquet tables. The stonekeeper froze. Bertram looked toward the root-bound family tree. "Continue. Old rootstone can shift when a branch is cut." The second strike removed the first letter of Jude's name. Roland stepped between the keeper and the children. "Stop." Bertram's expression sharpened. "The decree has already been witnessed. If we halt because the floor settles, the bloodhouses will say the king's law changes under pressure." Harriet looked down. A thin stone root had risen through the seam beside Jude's boot. It curled around his ankle without tightening. Another emerged beside Tamsin and followed the edge of her shadow. Bertram raised the decree. "Stand away from them. The tree may be responding to an unlawful oath attachment. Proximity could strengthen the disturbance." Harriet remained where she was. "For 13 years, every danger told them to stand behind me. I will not teach them to step away now, because your law is frightened of stone." The roots crossed the outer floor toward her. Roland reached toward Harriet, then stopped before touching her sleeve. "If they tighten, you signed the order that placed them there. Do not claim the first right to protect me from its answer. The floor split across the center of root-bound hall. Stone roots rose between the banquet tables and circled Tamsin and Jude without crossing into the ruling branch. A third root reached Harriet and joined their two lines in the outer stone. The scar beneath her dead husband's name remained closed. Then the root-bound family tree struck one word into the stone at Harriet's feet. Mother. Bertram Quill recovered first. The tree has named kinship, he said. It has not named succession. The stone roots remained around Harriet, Tamsin, and Jude. They had not crossed into the ruling branch. The scar beneath Prince Aldrich's name remained closed. Harriet kept one hand on Jude's shoulder. Then stopped the chisels. The Blood Continuity Act still removes oath. Adopted descendants from the ruling branch. The tree's response may confirm a family bond without granting inheritance or royal eligibility. I did not ask you for the crown. No, but the record must distinguish motherhood from succession. Then distinguish them without taking my children. Roland Hearth stood between the stonekeeper and the root-bound family tree. Remove the chisels. Bertram turned toward him. Your Majesty, halting the correction, may be interpreted as suspension of the decree. It is suspension of the cutting. The witnesses may not hear a difference. Then explain it carefully. The stonekeeper lowered both tools. Tamsin looked at the broken edge of her name. Does it stay like that? For now, Roland said. Jude moved closer to Harriet. Are we still going away? Not tonight. Bertram folded the Blood Continuity Act. Guardianship reassignment remained separate from ruling branch status. The household allowed Lady Harriet to continue as acting guardian while the succession remained unsettled. Today's decree requires every non-blood branch to undergo formal sponsorship review. Harriet faced him. They have rooms, tutors, inheritance from Aldrich's private estate, and 7 years of recognized household standing. The Crown must know which estate is legally bound to defend their residence, education, and property. Their father gave them one. Prince Aldrich gave them household adoption. Whether his sponsorship ended with him, and whether your guardianship survived him, depend upon the wording of the oath. Roland looked toward the oath judges beneath the western wall. Bring the adoption record. The royal copy is held in the genealogy archive, the senior judge said. Then bring it here. Bertram placed one hand over the decree. The purity banquet is not an oath hearing. It became one when you proposed removing 2 children before showing whether their surviving guardian still held lawful authority. An archive clerk returned with Prince Aldrich's sealed parchment case. Bertram opened it before the witnesses. The royal copy named Tamsin and Jude as oath-adopted children of Prince Aldrich Hearth. Household residence granted. Education and maintenance secured through minority. Private property protected under the prince's estate. Royal house sponsorship and estate liability secured for the lifetime of the sponsoring prince. Bertram rested one finger beneath it. Prince Aldrich's death ended the royal house's named sponsorship obligation. Without a surviving guardian clause in this copy, Lady Harriet's continuing authority is not established. Harriet stared at the wording. That was not the oath we spoke. Grief can alter memory. I was standing beside him. You were named as household witness. I was named as their mother. Bertram's tone softened without becoming kind. The tree has confirmed that relationship. The royal copy does not establish the legal term of your guardianship. Tamsin stepped closer to the table. I remember signing. You placed a child's mark beneath the adoption oath, Bertram said. There were 2 names above mine. Mine and Aldrich's, Harriet said. Tamsin nodded. A child's memory cannot amend a sealed royal copy, Bertram replied. She was 6. Her memory is reason to compare the records, not a replacement for them. Roland reached for the parchment case. Bertram did not release it immediately. Your Majesty, if household memory can challenge every genealogy record, the bloodhouses will claim no royal document is stable. And if the archive copy is incomplete, then proper comparison is required. Comparison will establish what Prince Aldrich swore, Bertram said. It will not determine whether that oath survives the Blood Continuity Act. First, establish the oath, Roland answered. Bertram released the case. Roland addressed the oath judges. Guardianship reassignment is suspended until the original is examined. One bloodhouse witness rose. The children remain possible tools against your succession. They remain children under Crown protection, while the law is interpreted. Harriet looked at him. Your protection? The Crown's. That is better. Bertram glanced toward the unfinished names. The children still cannot remain within the ruling branch while the Blood Continuity Act stands. Harriet placed her hand over the broken edge of Tamsin's name. Then leave them unfinished. Do not complete an erasure while the oath that placed them here is disputed. The damaged entries may invite rival claims. The rival claims already exist. Completing the erasure will not remove them. Roland turned to the keeper. No further mark is removed. Harriet's branch remained severed, and the children's names remained damaged. Roland had stopped the keeper, nothing more. The purity banquet was suspended. The doors remained sealed under the oath judge's authority, while Harriet kept the children beside her in the outer stone. The judges descended to the independent lower archive beneath Rootbound Hall, where original adoption vows were stored apart from genealogy copies. They returned near midnight with a thicker parchment, bearing Aldrich's first seal and Harriet's handprint beside it. Bertram opened the royal copy again. The two documents matched through residence, education, maintenance, property protection, and the term of Prince Aldrich's royal house sponsorship. Then the original continued for one more line. Upon the death of either adopting parent, full guardianship remains with the surviving parent until the child's majority. Harriet's name stood beneath the clause. The royal copy ended one line before Harriet Quince. Bertram laid the original oath beside the genealogy copy. The omitted clause is genuine, he said. Its authority is still disputed. Rootbound Hall remained sealed beneath the oath judge's authority. Harriet stood with Tamsin and Jude, while the witnesses gathered around the comparison table. What part is disputed? Harriet asked. The original oath governs guardianship, residence, maintenance, and private property, Bertram said. The sheet beside it is the genealogy abstract reissued during the accession review. It governs how those relationships are recorded within the royal line. My right to raise them was not created by the family tree. No, but the Blood Continuity Act may limit how an older oath is enforced when that oath affects a royal household. Does it say that? Bertram opened the act. It requires every non-blood branch to undergo sponsorship review and removal from the ruling line. That answers where their names appear. It does not answer who raises them. An oath judge marked the distinction. Bertram continued. A surviving guardian without royal sponsorship may still lack an estate capable of defending the children's residence, education, or property. Aldrich's private estate remains. Parts of it were administered through the royal household. Those obligations require review after the sponsoring prince's death. Then review the estate, Harriet said. Do not treat uncertainty in its accounts as proof that my guardianship ended. Bertram's gaze remained level. I have not called it proof. I have called it an unresolved obligation. Roland looked toward the senior oath judge. Which authority controls the children's guardianship tonight? That depends upon dates, scope, and whether the later statute expressly overrides prior vows. Then establish all three. The original oath had been sworn 7 years earlier, during Prince Aldrich's lifetime. The Blood Continuity Act had been enacted 3 weeks after Roland's accession. Harriet turned toward him. You applied that law to this household without reading the oath that governed it. Yes. Did you ask whether Aldrich had named me as surviving guardian? No. Did you ask whether the children's property protections depended upon their place in the ruling branch? No. Roland kept one hand on the table. I let the decree reach the children before examining the oath that governed their home. Tamsin watched him from beside Harriet. Would you have read it if the tree had stayed quiet? Roland's jaw tightened. No. Jude moved closer to Harriet. Bertram turned a page in the Blood Continuity Act. The king's failure to examine the oath does not answer whether the later statute superseded it. Correct, Harriet said. So, read the statute. The oath judges divided the act into separate provisions: succession eligibility, ruling, branch entries, and sponsorship review for non-blood children housed within royal estates. They read the text twice. Roland looked toward the senior judge. Where does it dissolve existing guardianship oaths? The judge continued searching. Bertram spoke carefully. A later law may displace an older agreement by necessary effect, even without naming every prior oath. Necessary for what? Harriet asked. To prevent non-blood branches from creating continuing royal obligations after their sponsor's death. Guardianship is not succession, but residence, estate protection, and public family standing may still impose duties upon the crown. Then define those duties. Do not make removal of a name do the work of ending a family. Bertram paused. The law may preserve private guardianship while requiring external sponsorship. That remains for interpretation. Harriet looked at Roland. Then guardianship reassignment should not have begun before this hearing. No, he said. The senior oath judge entered Roland's admission beside the temporary order. Your Majesty, the decree required immediate review, Bertram said. It did not require the chisels to fall before the governing oath was opened. The senior oath judge marked the final page. The Blood Continuity Act contains no express clause dissolving guardianship vows sworn before its enactment. One Bloodhouse witness objected. Then the act is meaningless. Every household will hide succession claims inside old adoption oaths. The oath grants custody, not a place in the succession, Harriet said. The distinction may not survive political use. Then regulate the political use. Do not remove children from their mother, because someone else may misuse their names. Roland faced the oath judges. Until hierarchy is decided, Harriet Quince remains acting guardian under the original oath. Bertram turned toward him. That is an interim interpretation. It restores neither the ruling branch nor the private estate. It preserves Harriet's guardianship while those questions are heard, Roland said. Harriet stepped closer. And it does not end the review. No. Then record all of that. The senior judge entered the order. Harriet's branch remained severed. Tamsin's and Jude's names remained damaged. The root-bound family tree gave no further answer. Bertram touched the recertification notch at the lower edge of the genealogy abstract. This was reissued during the accession review. The classification instruction will show whether the surviving parent clause was omitted by rule or by error. At his request, a clerk brought the accession classification ledger from the sealed cabinet beside the tree. The instruction read, Upon accession review, existing genealogy abstracts shall be reissued to retain only provisions affecting royal sponsorship, estate liability, and succession standing. Private surviving guardian clauses shall remain in the oath archive and shall not be reproduced in the ruling abstract. The clerk checked the accession index. The instruction was entered 4 days after the Blood Continuity Act. Tamsin and Jude's abstract was reissued 2 days later. At its foot rested the royal accession seal, issued in Roland Harth's name. Roland recognized the seal impression. He did not recognize the instruction above it. The royal accession seal had been pressed cleanly beneath the classification order, but the wording that removed private guardianship clauses from ruling abstracts was unfamiliar to him. Bertram Quill examined the ledger without touching the seal. Accession officers issued dozens of administrative instructions during a transition, he said. The seal proves crown authority. It does not prove the king personally reviewed every line. Harriet remained beside Tamsin and Jude within the outer roots. No one has said it does. Roland looked at her. She continued, but authority carried in your name shortened the document later, used to question whether I could keep my children. Yes. Bertram turned toward the oath judges. The classification policy may still have been lawful. A genealogy abstract is not intended to reproduce every private guardianship term. Then why was it presented as the controlling guardianship record? Harriet asked. That is the question now before us. For the first time that night, Bertram's answer did not close the argument. It narrowed it. Roland faced the senior oath judge. Bring the accession seal, release docket. The judge hesitated. The docket is held in the Crown Archive. Then seal the doors until it arrives. They are already sealed, Harriet said. Roland glanced toward the barred entrances of Root-bound Hall. So they are. A clerk was sent through the lower passage connecting the hall to the Crown Archive. While they waited, Bertram placed the genealogy abstract beside the original oath. The omission itself may be proper, he said. Surviving guardianship remains preserved in the oath archive. Harriet looked at him. It remained preserved where no one consulted it. The oath archive exists for legal disputes. The dispute began only after my children's names were struck. The act required a ruling branch review. It did not require officials to treat a summary as though nothing outside it existed. Bertram inclined his head slightly. That use may have exceeded the abstract's purpose. Roland's attention sharpened. Who authorized its use for guardianship reassignment? The review committee would have relied upon the genealogy packet. Who assembled the packet? The accession records will show that. Tamsin looked toward the damaged edge of her name. Was mother's name left out because someone wanted us gone? Bertram answered carefully. The records do not establish that. Harriet rested one hand against Tamsin's back. They established that the document used against us was incomplete. Intent is still being examined. Roland looked at Harriet. You are protecting the distinction even now. I am protecting the children from another answer given before the evidence. He accepted that without reply. The Crown Clerk returned with a black docket case secured by the accession seal and 2 archive knots. The oath judges opened it before the same witnesses who had remained through the night. Inside lay the seal release entries from Roland's first month as king. Each use listed a requester, purpose, packet title, and authorized number of impressions. Border, command, confirmation. Treasury continuity orders. Temporary oath appointments. The Blood Continuity Act. Roland read the entries himself. Find the 4th day after the act. The clerk turned several pages. One accession packet was authorized that night. Bertram moved closer. Title. Genealogy Review Procedures and Continuity Administration. Harriet looked at Roland. Did you authorize that packet? I authorized a packet, under that title. Did you read its contents? I reviewed the summary. Did the summary mention removing surviving guardian clauses from ruling abstracts? No, Bertram said. Administrative wording may have been attached by the genealogy office after general approval. Roland faced him. Within the authorized packet, if the attachment implemented the approved purpose, was that permitted? A drafting office may finalize procedural language without returning every sentence to the throne. Harriet looked at the docket. Then, someone still had to request the seal for the final version. The clerk traced the entry. Requester, Accession Administration. Roland's jaw tightened. That is an office. The senior oath judge answered. The seal release rules require a named custodian beneath the office title. The line beneath Accession Administration was partly obscured by a folded receipt. The clerk lifted it carefully. A name should have been written there. The space was blank. Bertram remained composed. An omitted custodian name does not make the instruction invalid. No, Harriet said, but it means the Crown cannot yet identify who carried Roland's authority from the approved summary to the instruction that shortened our record. Roland closed his hand over the edge of the docket. I approved a general packet. Someone used that approval to issue a specific rule. That does not free you from what followed, Harriet said. I know. You still allowed the abstract to be treated as complete. Yes. And the chisels fell under your decree. Yes. The oath judge entered each admission into the record. Bertram looked toward the children's unfinished names. The classification rule may still be lawful, even if the seal process was poorly recorded. The greater error may lie in using the abstract for guardianship reassignment. Then identify who authorized that use, Roland said. The clerk searched the packet list attached to the authorized accession release. Every document approved under the seal was itemized. The Blood Continuity Enforcement Guide, the Ruling Branch Review Schedule, the Sponsorship Assessment Form. The Genealogy Classification Instruction was not among them. The authorized accession packet did not contain the instruction that had shortened Harriet's genealogy abstract. Someone had placed Crown authority beneath a document the approved list did not name. Bertram Quill studied the packet inventory. That establishes a seal. Control defect, he said. It does not establish that the classification policy itself was unlawful. Roland Hearth kept one hand on the seal release docket. Who could add an instruction after the packet was approved? An accession custodian, a senior archive clerk, or the genealogy office acting under implementation authority? Which one acted here? The missing custodian line prevents an immediate answer. Harriet stood beside Tamsin and Jude within the outer roots. The missing name matters. So does what happened after the instruction entered the archive. Roland looked toward her. She continued. Officials treated a limited abstract as though it were the complete law of my household. That mistake reached the children before anyone opened the original oath. Bertram followed his hands. The Blood Continuity Act still governs ruling, branch standing. One misused abstract does not suspend the statute across the kingdom. No, Harriet said, but it proves other households may be facing review under summaries that omit the rights protecting them. A Bloodhouse witness rose. Your Majesty, delaying the act invites every disputed branch to challenge the accession. Roland looked at Tamsin's damaged name. Then they may challenge it. Bertram turned toward him. The Eastern houses supported your crown because you promised a clean ruling line. I gave them children's names in place of certainty. You gave the kingdom a standard it could enforce. I enforced it before verifying the record beneath my own roof. The senior oath judge moved closer to the docket. What action does the Crown request? Roland removed the accession seal from the chain at his waist. Bertram's gaze sharpened. Your Majesty, until the release process is examined, no instruction carrying this seal will be treated as personally reviewed, unless the packet and named custodian are both recorded. He placed the seal before the oath judges. The court will hold it. A murmur moved among the Bloodhouse witnesses. One of them stepped forward. You would surrender control of the accession seal during a succession dispute? I am surrendering unrecorded use of it. The distinction may not survive beyond this hall. Then record the distinction before anyone carries it outside. The senior judge accepted the seal. Roland continued. Enforcement of the Blood Continuity Act is suspended where it would remove a child, end guardianship, or reassign a household before the complete governing oath is examined. Bertram's voice remained calm. That reaches beyond Harriet's case. It must. Harriet looked at him. Every oath? Bound household? Yes. Every widow whose authority was treated as temporary? If the governing oath says otherwise, yes. Put those words in the order. Roland faced the clerk. No household loses guardianship, residence, maintenance, or property protection on the strength of a ruling abstract alone. The clerk began writing. Bertram approached the table. You are allowing one disputed record to halt a law intended to stabilize your throne. I am preventing my throne from being stabilized through records no one has compared with the originals. And if the Bloodhouses withdraw recognition, Roland looked at the black wolf crown above the throne. Then the cost belongs to the king, who signed the act. Harriet heard the difference. He had once made her branch pay for his disputed crown. Now he was placing the dispute back where it belonged. It did not repair her name. It did not make the damaged letters whole. Roland turned to her. The guardianship's suspension protects you and the children until the judges rule. It protects us from the next order, Harriet said. It does not answer the first. No. And it does not return our place in the family. No. Then do not call it restoration. I will not. Jude looked toward the accession seal now held by the oath judges. Can they still send us away? Not while the order stands, Roland said. Harriet rested a hand on Jude's shoulder. The judges will hear the oath before anyone decides where you belong. Roland accepted the correction. Bertram reopened the accession packet. If the classification instruction was added outside the authorized inventory, the archive route should identify where it entered the file. The clerk traced the docket numbers through 3 departments. Crown Drafting had prepared the Blood Continuity Act. Accession Administration had assembled the enforcement packet. The Genealogy Office had received the sealed authority and issued the reclassification instructions. Roland looked at Bertram. Your office. My office received authority already bearing the accession seal. Who received it? The intake register will show. A clerk brought the genealogy intake book from the sealed cabinet. The accession packet had arrived intact. 2 days later, an additional instruction had been entered under the same seal authority. The receiving line carried no personal signature, only a reference number. Bertram examined it. That number belongs to a restricted lineage file. Whose? Harriet asked. He did not answer immediately. Roland moved beside the clerk. Open the index. Bertram's hand remained on the book. Restricted lineage records require the subject's consent. Roland looked at the sealed accession seal across the table. You have it. The clerk turned to the reference number. The entry named a childhood lineage exception issued decades before the Blood Continuity Act. Subject: Roland Hearth. The restricted lineage file could not be opened with the king's consent alone. 2 oath judges brought it from the lower archive and placed it beside the accession docket. A black cord crossed the case beneath 3 seals: Crown Authority, Genealogy, Custody, and the root-bound oath archive. Bertram Quill kept one hand near the reference ledger. A childhood lineage exception may contain private medical and inheritance records unrelated to the present dispute. Roland Hearth looked at the case bearing his name. The reference number was used to enter an instruction outside the authorized accession packet. That connection requires examination. It does not require public disclosure of every page. Harriet remained beside Tamsin and Jude within the outer roots. You used my incomplete abstract before witnesses. Bertram met her gaze. Your guardianship was already under review, and Roland's lineage was protected from the same review. The king's file concerns a settled accession. Roland looked toward the bloodhouse witnesses who had remained through the night. My accession is the reason Harriet's family was cut from the tree. He removed the black wolf crown and placed it on the witness table. Open the file. A senior oath judge broke the first seal. Bertram spoke more quietly. Once read into the record, the contents cannot be returned to private custody. I understand. The eastern houses may challenge your crown before sunrise. I understand that too. The final cord was cut. Inside lay an infant death record, a sealed household oath, and a lineage exception written more than 30 years earlier. The senior judge read the first page. A male child born to the reigning royal household died before his naming moon. Roland did not move. The second record named another infant, brought into the royal nursery 11 days later. Roland Hearth. Tamsin looked from the parchment to the king. What does that mean? The judge answered gently. He was not born to the royal parents who raised him. Jude held Harriet's sleeve. He was adopted? Roland looked at the children whose names he had permitted the keeper to strike. Yes. The word left no room for title or ceremony. Bertram opened the older oath. Roland entered the Hearth household under a royal root adoption. The oath granted family name, residence, inheritance, and succession eligibility. Harriet looked toward the Blood Continuity Act. The law says only descendants born to the royal wolf line may remain within the ruling branch. A later statute does not necessarily dissolve a completed royal adoption, Bertram said. That was your argument against my oath. No. I argued that the effect required interpretation. You required interpretation for Roland. You ordered reassignment for my children. Bertram's expression remained composed. The throne and a private guardianship do not carry identical consequences. The principle was blood. The kingdom cannot be left without a sovereign because an old sealed exception is discovered. Harriet looked at Roland. And the children could be left without their mother? He did not look away. No. Bertram turned toward the oath judges. The king's adoption was completed under the law existing at the time. His accession may therefore remain valid even if the Blood Continuity Act governs later branches. Harriet placed one hand over Tamsin's damaged name. Our oath was completed 7 years before the act. The distinction lies in royal succession authority. Then the law never meant blood purity. It meant protecting whichever adoption the crown found useful. One bloodhouse witness stepped forward. If Roland is not bloodborn, every order issued under his crown may be challenged. Bertram answered immediately. The root adoption granted succession eligibility. The act removed non-blood branches. It may not apply retroactively to a reigning king. Yet it was applied to children whose oath came first, Harriet said. The senior judge marked both arguments for formal review. Roland looked at the infant records. My parents knew. Yes, Bertram said. Aldrich knew? The restricted file does not record when he was told. Roland's hand rested beside his dead brother's seal. Did you know before drafting the Blood Continuity Act? Bertram paused. I knew a lineage exception existed. Restricted law prevented me from disclosing its contents without royal consent. That was not my question. Yes, Bertram said. I knew the exception concerned you. The witnesses shifted around the table. Roland's voice remained controlled. And you advised me to sign a law defining the ruling family by birth. I advised a statute capable of stabilizing a disputed succession, while knowing its plain language could exclude me. I knew your prior adoption carried separate royal authority, but you did not include that exception in the act. Writing it openly would have revealed the sealed lineage. Harriet studied Bertram. So the law was strict enough to erase children, but flexible enough to conceal the king. The kingdom required continuity. The children required a mother. Roland closed the Blood Continuity Act. Read my adoption into the public record. Bertram's head lifted. Your Majesty, do not make a permanent decision in answer to guilt. This is not an answer to guilt. It is the same examination I denied Harriet. He faced the oath judges. No ruling on her family will proceed under a blood standard whose application to the king remains hidden. One judge looked toward the crown. That order may suspend your authority until the succession challenge is heard. Then, suspend it. Harriet's expression changed only slightly. Roland turned toward her. I will not offer you guardianship in exchange for silence. You could not afford my silence. No. And opening your file does not repair what you did. I know. She looked toward the children. It does prevent you from making them carry the secret that protected you. The judge entered Roland's adoption beneath the accession review. Then he unfolded the final page in the restricted file. It was not an ancient record. It had been added on the first morning of Roland's reign. Restriction renewed. Lineage exception withheld from accession review. Custodian. Royal genealogist Bertram Quill. By sunrise, the bloodhouses had divided into two questions: whether Roland Hearth could remain king, and whether Harriet Quince had ever ceased to be a mother. The oath judges kept the hearings separate. Witnesses clustered beneath different banners. Some watched the black wolf crown lying on the evidence table. Others watched Bertram Quill's renewed restriction order. I renewed the seal because the prior king's order required every childhood lineage exception to remain closed during accession. Roland faced him from below the throne. You knew the sealed exception concerned me. Yes. You advised a blood-borne succession standard without requiring my own claim to be tested against it. I advised a law the border houses would accept without learning that the new king had entered the dynasty through root adoption. Harriet held Jude's hand, while Tamsin stood against her shoulder. You protected the crown from the standard you gave everyone else. Bertram looked toward her. I protected an existing royal adoption from a later political weapon, and used that weapon on two younger adoptions. The cases are not identical. They did not need to be identical for you to know the law could destroy a family. The senior oath judge suspended Bertram's authority over restricted lineage files until the sealed docket and accession packet were reviewed. Bertram surrendered the archive keys without protest. This may satisfy the hall, he said, but removing the genealogist will not answer who governs by nightfall. A messenger from the eastern gate entered before anyone replied. 3 bloodhouses had withdrawn provisional recognition of Roland's accession. 2 demanded a new succession hearing. The northern levy had paused its oath renewal until the king's legal standing was determined. Tamsin looked toward the crown. Will they make you leave? Roland answered her directly. They may. Did you know that when you opened the file? Yes. Jude frowned. Then why did you? Roland's gaze moved to Harriet before returning to the boy. Because I had already asked your family to pay for a certainty I did not possess. Harriet did not soften. The children need to leave this hall. Roland stepped toward her, then stopped beyond the outer roots. The west apartments are guarded. They are inside the royal household. They can remain sealed from the court. That was the arrangement you intended for me after removing my standing, a private place where affection could survive without troubling public law. His face tightened. I will not offer it again. The children will go to Aldrich's winter house. Bertram turned from the judges. That estate is still under review. The house itself was granted to Aldrich before either child entered the ruling branch, Harriet said. Its title does not depend upon succession eligibility. The senior oath judge checked the private estate inventory. She is correct. Occupancy may continue while liability and maintenance are reviewed. Roland said, the road crosses 2 bloodhouse boundaries. I am aware. I can assign royal guards. Harriet looked at the crown on the evidence table. Guards carrying disputed authority may create the danger they are meant to prevent. Then choose the escort. She named 2 oath officers, 4 household retainers who had served Aldrich, and a physician for Jude's winter lungs. She requested sealed copies of the interim guardianship order, the original adoption oath, and every entry recording the damage to the children's names. The senior judge approved each request. Roland watched the documents being prepared. Will you allow the crown to fund the household until the estate review is complete? The children's maintenance was promised under Aldrich's oath. That obligation may be disputed. Then place the funds in judicial trust. Do not make them dependent on your personal favor. I will order it. The judges should order it. Roland looked toward the senior judge. Prepare the trust. Harriet gathered the children's cloaks herself. No attendant approached until she asked. No courtier attempted farewell. At the doors, Roland held Aldrich's old winter key in his palm. He left this with me during his last campaign. Harriet stared at the iron key. Her husband's thumb had worn one edge smooth. Why did you keep it? He asked me to make sure the house remained yours if he did not return. Silence spread between them. You knew that? She asked. I knew what he wanted. I told myself the decree concerned the ruling branch, not the life he left you. And when the decree reached the children, I let Bertram's review answer a question Aldrich had already answered. Harriet took the key without touching Roland's hand. I will honor what my husband intended. That is not the same as accepting what you offer now. I understand. He moved aside. Jude paused before following Harriet. Are you still my uncle? Roland looked at the unfinished letter in the boy's name. I do not know what the law will call me. Jude waited. Roland continued, but I will not use uncertainty to send you away again. Harriet placed her hand between Jude's shoulders and guided him through the doors. Roland did not follow. By the time the winter carriage passed beyond Rootbound Hall, challenges to his crown had reached every gate tower. Inside the emptying chamber, the oldest stone root beneath the throne pulled free of the royal dais. By morning, the royal dais no longer touched the root-bound family tree. The oldest root had withdrawn into the floor, leaving a narrow trench between the throne and the stone that carried the hearth line. Bertram Quill stood beneath guard beside the genealogy table. The tree has not removed Roland's name, he said. A structural change in the root stone is not a succession ruling. Roland remained below the dais. No one will call it one. A Bloodhouse lord pointed toward the severed root. Then sit the throne and show the kingdom it still has a king. Roland looked at the Black Wolf crown. The kingdom has a disputed king whose administration used an incomplete abstract to remove children from their guardian. You cannot govern by confessing every failure before your enemies. I governed by hiding uncertainty once. Harriet and the children paid for it. He ordered the Purity Banquet record open to every regional oath court. The original adoption clause, the shortened abstract, the seal release defect, his own lineage exception, and each admission he had made were copied under judicial supervision. Bertram watched the clerk's work. Public disclosure will produce challenges beyond your ability to contain. Then they will be heard. The northern houses may refuse your levy. They may. The eastern houses may demand abdication. They already have. Roland signed the first order without sitting the throne. All guardianship reassignments begun under the Blood Continuity Act were suspended. Every household reviewed through a ruling abstract had to be compared with its complete oath record. No child could be transferred until an independent judge confirmed guardianship, residence, maintenance, and estate protection separately from succession status. The second order removed the genealogy office from sole control of those reviews. Bertram's expression hardened. You are dismantling the office because one abstract was misused. I am removing its power to decide what its own omissions mean. The classification policy preserved private clauses in the oath archive, and your office allowed their absence elsewhere to be treated as extinction. That decision passed through more than one hand. Then every hand will be named. Roland ordered the intake books, drafting instructions, reassignment forms, and seal requests placed under oath court custody. He did not accuse Bertram of forging the instruction. He did not excuse him either. By midday, the first review returned from a western province. A widow there had been told her oath-bound daughters would be transferred to a bloodhouse because the ruling abstract named no surviving guardian. The complete oath named her. Roland read the finding before the witnesses. Bertram said, one additional case may show poor enforcement, not malicious design. It shows Harriet was not the only woman required to prove a right the Crown had chosen not to copy. The senior judge entered the Western case beside Harriet's. Roland then signed a third order placing Aldrich's winter house and the children's maintenance under judicial trust until the estate dispute ended. He sent no royal guards. He sent the order with the two oath officers Harriet had chosen. Near dusk, he rode to the winter house alone. Harriet met him beneath the bare orchard, wearing Aldrich's old grey cloak. Tamsin and Jude watched through the lighted window behind her. You were told not to bring disputed authority across the boundary, she said. I brought none. He held out a sealed judicial copy. The trust is active. The house cannot be seized during the review, and the children's maintenance no longer depends on my discretion. Harriet accepted the document. That should have existed before we left the hall. Yes. And the other households? Every reassignment is suspended. Complete oaths are being retrieved. How many? 40. 3 reviews began under the Act. Her fingers tightened around the seal. 40. 3 families were placed under threat so your throne could appear uncomplicated. Yes. Winter air moved between them. Roland did not step closer. I have ordered my own succession challenge heard before the same judges. You could have separated your case from theirs. I did before. I will not again. And if they remove you, Then the law will be repaired by whatever authority remains after me. Harriet studied his face. You are beginning to understand that repair cannot depend on whether you keep the power to receive credit for it. I am. From the house, Jude opened the door. Are you coming inside? Roland looked toward Harriet rather than answering. She said, Not tonight. He inclined his head. Tamsin appeared behind Jude. Did they put our names back? No, Roland said. Did they put Mother's back? No. Then what did you fix? The next family will not be cut before its whole oath is read. Tamsin considered that. That is not our family. No, Roland said. It is work I owed before asking what can be repaired for yours. Harriet's expression shifted, though she kept the distance between them. Roland reached inside his coat and removed a proposed restoration order. It would return Harriet and the children to Aldrich's branch while the larger law was reviewed. I have not signed it, he said. Why? Because it restores only the family standing in front of me. Harriet looked at the blank signature line. The order named 3 people. No widow from the Western Province. No oath-bound child beyond Rootbound Hall. No family whose care had never entered Royal Stone. She folded the order once and gave it back. Then bring me a law that does not need my name to recognize theirs. 3 days later, Harriet returned to Rootbound Hall, carrying no petition for herself. Tamsin walked at her right, Jude at her left. Behind them came the Western widow whose complete oath had restored her daughters to her care, 2 retired oath guardians, and representatives from 12 households placed under review by the Blood Continuity Act. Roland waited below the throne. The black wolf crown remained on the witness table. Bertram Quill stood under oath court guard with the accession ledgers open before him. The senior judge looked toward the document in Harriet's hand. Is that the restoration order? It is the order Roland brought to my house. She laid it beside the damaged names in the outer stone. It restores 3 people. It protects no one else. Roland did not defend it. I withdrew it, because you understood it was an exception. Yes. Harriet faced the witnesses. I will not return to Aldrich's branch under a mercy that ends at my children. A Bloodhouse Lord rose. Your guardianship has already been preserved. The other households can be heard separately. They were harmed under one law. They should not have to survive 43 separate acts of royal attention. Bertram spoke from the evidence table. A universal rule cannot treat every oath adoption alike. Some were private custody arrangements. Some carried estate obligations. A few were created to avoid succession limits. Then examine their terms, Harriet said. But stop treating blood as the only proof before the examination begins. She unfolded a draft prepared with the independent oath judges. It separated 4 rights officials had collapsed into one another. Kinship recognition, personal guardianship, residence and maintenance, royal succession. An adopted child may hold the first 3 without holding the 4th, Harriet said. A surviving parent may retain guardianship without creating a claim to the throne. An estate dispute may be heard without removing a child from the person who raised them. Bertram read the first page. This would require complete oath review before any reassignment. Yes, it would prevent ruling abstracts from being used as sole legal instruments. Yes, it would permit sworn care to create legally recognized kinship outside blood descent. It would require the law to record what families have already lived. The Bloodhouse Lord turned to Roland. If you enact this, every old adoption may return to the courts. Every old adoption wrongly reduced to a summary should return. And your own? First among them. Harriet looked toward the crown. The draft cannot depend on a king preserving himself. Roland met de Gaze. What do you require? That the oath judges, not the genealogy office, control guardianship review. Agreed. That every surviving parent clause remain enforceable unless a court finds coercion, abandonment, or danger to the child. Agreed. That no child lose residence or maintenance while adults dispute succession. Agreed. And that the law apply even if your adoption removes you from the throne. The hall went still. Roland's hand rested against the witness table. Yes. Bertram watched him carefully. You are agreeing before the succession judges have ruled. I am agreeing that family law will not be shaped around the outcome I prefer. Harriet placed the draft before the senior oath judge. This is not yet complete. What remains? The children. Tamsin stepped forward. No one asked us before they cut our names. Jude stood beside her. If grown people argue about the crown, children should stay with the person who comes when they are sick. Harriet added a final provision. No guardianship reassignment involving an oath-bound child old enough to speak could proceed without the child being heard privately by an independent judge. Bertram read the addition. Children can be influenced. So can kings, Harriet said. We still require their testimony. The senior judge accepted the draft for public hearing. A clerk brought the Blood Continuity Act forward. Lady Harriet, do you seek immediate restoration while the new law is considered? No. Roland looked at her but did not interrupt. My name stays where your decree left it, until the same protection is available to every family reviewed under that decree. Tamsin touched the broken edge of her own name. And Ors. Harriet knelt beside her. We will not let them repair the stone before they repair the rule that broke it. Roland moved one step closer. If the new law passes, I cannot ask you to return as though these weeks were a misunderstanding. They were not. I know. And reform does not make me your reward. No. His voice remained steady. I would still like a place in your life. Harriet rose. Then help pass a law that may leave you without a crown. After that, we can decide what place is honest. The public hearing was set for the following moonrise. As the judges carried Harriet's draft toward the law table, the outer roots beneath root-bound Hall began moving. They did not reach for Harriet's severed branch. They spread toward every blank household stone along the walls. At moonrise, root-bound Hall opened every door. Widows stood beside oath-bound children. The bloodhouses faced the Black Wolf crown and Harriet's proposed law. The outer roots had reached every blank household stone. The senior oath judge called the hearing to order. Today, we decide whether sworn care may create recognized family without creating royal succession. Bertram Quill stood without his genealogist's keys. The distinction is possible, he said, but Lady Harriet's draft gives private oaths public force. That may weaken blood descent as the kingdom's organizing principle. Harriet stood between Tamsin and Jude. Blood may organize succession. It cannot erase the people who feed a child, keep vigil through illness, teach restraint through a first shift, or remain after death empties a chair. An Eastern lord lifted the Blood Continuity Act. And if adopted branches are used to challenge the throne, reject the claim to the throne, Harriet said. Do not reject the family. The judges confirmed that Roland's root adoption had granted succession under the law of his childhood. The later act contained no exception preserving him while excluding oath-bound children. The senior judge faced Roland. If applied by its plain language, the act removes your ruling branch eligibility. Roland stepped to the witness table. Then apply it. Bertram spoke over them. The kingdom requires continuity. The king's adoption was completed under sovereign authority. His case may be preserved without altering every private household. That was the bargain beneath your advice, Roland said. I advised survival. You advised a blood standard that reached everyone except the man wearing the crown. I preserved a lawful accession. You renewed the restriction on my lineage file and allowed the act to be enforced without disclosing that its language threatened my claim. Disclosure would have destabilized the realm. It transferred the danger to families with less power. The SEAL investigation had not proved Bertram drafted the unauthorized classification instruction. It had proved his office used shortened abstracts without requiring complete oaths before recommending reassignment. Roland faced the hall. Bertram Quill did not make me sign the act. He did not make me choose speed over examination. I accepted a law that made my crown easier to defend, and I allowed Harriet's family to bear its first cost. Roland removed the act from the law stand. I revoke crown enforcement of this statute. An Eastern lord struck the bench. You may lose the throne. I know. Roland placed Harriet's draft before the judges. I submit the Family Oath and Child Protection Act. It separates kinship, guardianship, estate obligations, and succession. It requires complete oath review, child testimony, and continued residence and maintenance during disputes. No ruling abstract may extinguish a right preserved in a complete oath. Harriet looked at him. And sworn care. Sworn care is family when freely undertaken, lawfully recorded, and faithfully lived. It does not require blood to become real. The judges called the houses. Some opposed him. Others changed their votes after the Western widow produced her daughter's complete oath. Border representatives supported the child hearing provision. The measure passed, without preserving Roland's crown. The succession judges suspended his royal eligibility, pending a new choosing under the older wolf laws. Roland bowed his head. Proceed. Bertram's authority was revoked for concealing a material lineage exception from enforcement review and permitting limited abstracts to be used beyond their purpose. A separate oath trial would follow. The senior judge turned to Harriet. Do you now seek restoration to Prince Aldrich's branch? Harriet looked at the scar beneath her husband's name. I seek recognition of the family we formed with him. I will not replace his memory, and I will not let my children be treated as though his love ended when his heart did. She placed one hand on Tamsin and one on Jude. Restore no private branch until every household harmed by the act receives review under the same law. The judges accepted her condition. The root-bound family tree moved. Stone roots crossed the outer floor, joining widows, guardians, and oath-bound children to their household stones. They did not enter the ruling branch unless succession law permitted it. Beneath the hearth line, new words appeared. Family may be born through blood. Family may also be sworn through care. Harriet's scar opened only as far as Eldric's household branch. Tamsin's and Jude's names were repaired beside hers. Roland's name remained apart from the ruling trunk, while the succession hearing awaited him. He approached Harriet without crown or title. I loved you in rooms where loving you cost me nothing, he said. When the cost became public, I chose the throne. You do not repair that by losing it. No, I repair what I can, and accept what remains yours to decide. And Aldrich? I will never ask you to make his life smaller, so there is room for mine. Jude took Roland's hand. Tamsin watched her mother. You may come to the Winter House, Harriet said. Not as king, not as the man who saved us. Come as the uncle who has work left to do. And as the man who loves you. When you can love this family without needing it to prove anything about you, we will speak of that. Roland nodded. Behind them, the tree carried Harriet's name through the restored household stone. She stood where sworn care had always placed her. Mother,